I'd like to welcome everybody to City Hall for our Planning Commission meeting tonight. We have 6 members of the commission present. We will be excusing Commissioner Badon for the evening. First item on our agenda for the night is our consent calendar. Any discussion, conversation, motions for the minutes? Commissioner England.
Just a motion to approve those minutes.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner England, seconded by Commissioner Thomas. Any discussion to the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're unanimous. Thank you. First item up on the public hearing list tonight is Jordan Landing Lot 4 inline retail at 3857 West Campus View Drive for a conditional use permit for a fast food restaurant. Foursquare Properties is the applicant, Dan Milich. You got the floor, sir. Welcome back.
It's good to be here, Planning Commission. Staff, members of the public, Dan Milich, Foursquare Properties, Brandon Lundeen
with Diversified Design.
our architect and building designer. We've gone through the staff report. Kent did a great job identifying all the issues. We have none with the report. We're in compliance with the zoning code as far as setbacks, height, bulk, so forth, parking for the facility. Brandon might want to run through the plans real quick so you can have a look at those.
I think the one item that was brought up on there was talking about building a sidewalk access from our property over to Jordan Landing Boulevard. And I have met with our civil designers and they don't see a problem in putting that sidewalk approach in. So we should be good as far as access to that piece of property there too.
Awesome. Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner England.
In the staff report, it's pretty vague as to fast food. Is it secret, or do we know who's coming in? Not that matters.
Well, we don't have a signed lease yet, so I can't really say, but it's a, I'll tell you this, it's Asian fast food, and there are other locations in the valley. This would be their first drive-through location, though, and they're very excited about this as an opportunity. That's the end cap.
Good enough.
Excellent. Any other questions for the applicants? Thank you for your brevity.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Mr. Page.
Thank you, Chair. So what we have before us is a final site plan and a conditional use permit. They were to ask the Planning Commission for your consideration. These 6 are conditions of approval that staff has recommended. That, business activities shall be substantially consistent with the submitted application, letter of intent, and site plan. 2, that was mentioned before, that Americans with Disability Act sidewalk will connect from Jordan Landing Boulevard. 3, a permit shall be obtained for any new exterior signage. 4, the business shall adhere to all sign requirements as set forth in Section 13-17 and Title 12 of the West Georgia Municipal Code. And 6, all future building uses will adhere to city code, including parking requirements. As you probably noted it in the staff report, that there's 3 areas in this building, and so the proposal is just for a restaurant, which is a conditional use in this zone. And so the other 2 properties or locations in the building will remain vacant. So we don't anticipate any parking troubles at this point, but that'll have to come into consideration as other businesses locate in the building.
Okay. I've got my first question. There's 5 conditions there. Are we missing one? It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
Yes. No, there's just 5. I missed the
Okay.
6.
Just
Sorry
want to make
about
sure
that.
we weren't missing a condition that we needed to discuss.
Sorry about that.
Any other questions for staff?
Nice job, man.
All right. And everything's blurry. These glasses aren't working very well, so. This is a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open this this first item up to the public. Is there anybody here who wants to tell us what they think about this? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to the planning commission for discussion, motion. Commissioner Green.
I move that based on the information tonight and the findings set forth in the staff report, I move that the planning commission approve the final site plan and a conditional use permit for Foursquare Properties Inc. to operate a fast food restaurant. I'm gonna stop there. Is it I'm not sure that operate's the best word there, but I move that the planning commission approve the final site plan and conditional use permit for Foursquare Properties for a fast food restaurant located at 3857 West Campus View Drive within an SC3 zone with the 5 conditions of approval listed on page 2 of the report.
Before we get a second, do you want to elaborate why you made that change? Because I don't see the difference.
It says that Foursquare is gonna operate it. I'm not sure that Foursquare plans on operating it. They're gonna lease it out. So they're gonna build it, so that's why I don't like the word operate there.
Okay, I get that. Commissioner England.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Green, seconded by Commissioner England. Any further discussion to the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are unanimous. Thank you as always for your continued interest in West Jordan. Moving right along, we have, Wood Ranch, 7400 South at U111, a development plan, general land use map amendment. We're just getting a presentation today, so I'm not gonna read this whole entire thing, but we've got Rich Sontag and, I can't remember your last name, Steve, sorry.
Stephen James.
Stephen James, thank you, from Daybreak Properties. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good to see you, Commissioners. Thank you for entertaining our presentation. I'm Rich Sontag. I'm Senior VP of Daybreak Communities, and we want to present to you tonight our plans for the Wood Ranch property. We're going to be trying to develop this under a planned community district, which means we're going to have obviously that zone, and then we're going to have a master development agreement, which contains its own set of development rules which apply to this property. These rules aren't exactly the same as what you see elsewhere in your city ordinances, but they are the rules that we use to try to create special places within a community like we have at Daybreak. And I think Stephen James, who as sort of the visionary behind Daybreak, is best equipped to explain how we're going to apply those principles and those rules to the Wood Ranch property. So I'm going to leave this to Stephen.
Thank you.
Is the mic on? Okay, great. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to actually be on this property, so I thought I would show a few images of how remarkable it is. And I think it really speaks to the type of land that will be coming online over the years to the west of current West Jordan city lines. We view this project as a bit of a gateway into the Oquirrh Mountains. And we had a number of staff members who got to go up on the hills. What's really striking about this land is its characteristics are really flat valleys with hills that come right out of the valley, very dome-shaped, and you feel like you are in a different place. And as we have been looking through the purpose and intent of the PC zone, we've tried to address every single one. And what I think is striking about this purpose and intent is that you're after attractive and desirable environments, variety of uses and structures, imaginative concepts, neighborhood housing, mixed use projects, flexibility on building location, social and community interaction, distinctive visual character, these types of things, which I think are really innovative. It sounds like you're after a new type of place, and so we're proposing a new type of place that really takes the special nature of this site into context. So I want to walk a bit through that. So this plan represents the area that we're asking to be rezoned as PC zone, and just to kind of get it on the table up front, it's about 363 acres. We're asking for 3,068 units, which is 4.82 units per gross acre. And right now, we're anticipating that about 45% of the units could be attached. And the reason for that has to do directly with the land use plan. So on this land use plan, we're indicating that there are places called neighborhood centers and village centers. And they're different in terms of the type of character they present and the housing. So we think of housing types as really tools for creating places as opposed to just, you know, widgets with a density assigned. We're really thinking about this through the lens of the type of place we're creating. So I wanted to speak to this a little bit, and I apologize the Wheel of Fortune approach to the text. Some of the letters just didn't show up. That should say Village Center Commercial. But when we say Village Center, this is the commercial. This is an example of the work that we did at Daybreak. And then there's Village Center Residential, which essentially steps down from the commercial experience into the neighborhoods. Then our neighborhood centers, the bottom line should say mixed use, is a blend of housing types. This is an example of a park that has homes valued from $180,000 to $700,000 around the same park. I think when we did a tour, we came by this area to show how we actually mix and blend the densities to create moments of crescendo and intensity within a plan, to create variety as you move through the place. Also in neighborhood mixed-use centers, we'll often have a school or a church or some sort of civic meeting or gathering place. Here's another way we did it. You know, we used a community garden. But anyhow, they're geared around bringing community together in a public space, whether it's active recreation or gardening. And then the last one is open space on the land use plan. That should say manicured and native, as well as recreation. Again, this is, we do intend to modify and enhance edges of the open space around the hill. So what that leads to is essentially 4 separate villages, what we're calling the Wood Farmstead, which is there on the south, the Central Village, the Western Hills, and essentially the North Village. And those colors are a little faint, so you probably can't see them on the screen. Hopefully you can see them on your monitor, how those are differentiated. This is the existing site. You can see that the slope zone is 0 to 10% in the valley, which is most of the area. And then you have zones up to 30%. We're sensitive to the fact that you don't want building on 30%. And so what we've tried to do is figure out a scenario that actually brought activity and interest to those hillsides. Because of the complexity of the slope conditions on the site, there is some grading that we'll have to do. This text should say hole, hole, hole. There are some fills that we'll need to fill in these basins that currently have no outlet. And so we imagine some of those areas that are long and sinuous, just right in the central valley, that would all get smoothed or graded out so you could build houses on it. And related to that existing site condition, thinking through the city's transportation master plan, this is really how those connections would lace through the site. And then we've also done some traffic studies. The dashed line south of 70th South goes through Norma Woods land, and she's not ready to commit to a specific, for a road to be built, but we have agreed on a future potential alignment. And we've been working with adjacent landowners as well. We've started working with Rushton as to how we might create connectivity through the site to solve potential future traffic problems. And then we've also engaged Rio Tinto and UDOT so that we can create stronger connectivity east to U-111, and are starting conversations with the Kennecott colleagues who are previous colleagues of mine as to how this might relate to the land further west. And this is essentially what happens when we drape the master plan that I'm going to walk you through over that topo. So what you'll be able to see is we are not developing on those primary hills. This northern end, which is currently in the county, is a part of a gravel mining operation. And so we're working with Hadco, John Hadfield, to set up a grading condition that leaves us a site that has prominent hills and open space on the west end of the property so that it relates to what's happening further on the south end. And the reason for that is part of our big idea around which this master plan hangs is active recreation and trail system. As we look at the landscape, often it can be frustrating when a property line arbitrarily drapes across primary open space features. And so one engagement that we're having with Kennecott Land is talking about how we might preserve more of the hill and turn it into some larger recreation amenity. And then I'll speak a little bit to that. But as you can see, the big idea in this plan is that the hills are left open, that they're laced with trails, maybe community gathering space and picnic pavilions. But at the base of the hills, we're lacing a green ribbon, a manicured green ribbon with a 10-foot asphalt multi-purpose trail that plugs into West Jordan's current trail master plan. And then we're also working to figure out how to extend these outside of our property. So one of the concerns also was how do we connect the trail across the bridge at U-111, and we're working on that as well. So this is just sort of a look at the overall master plan. And then I have some slides that show in perspective really what this means for the land. Am I out of time?
Yeah, please continue.
Okay. So this is a view looking over Norma Woods property, which we've also considered in the master plan. And you can see the types of spaces and neighborhoods that are tucked in between the hills. Those areas where the trees are showing is where we would predominantly, in addition to the streets, be planting an arcade of trees to create this shady trail system. Here's a view looking west toward the copper mine. This north end is the county, currently in the county land, which we're anticipating will be annexed. And then you can see Norma Woods property, and I believe Oker Heights is a Homes project that's going on right there. And then you can see really how those hills continue to the north. Just again, one more view to give you a sense of the laciness of the development pattern within the open space. So getting back to the master plan, I wanted to start a little bit by talking about trails. So trails are significant in the purpose, the idea that they connect people to places. And so as we've been thinking about this, you can see off of U-111 that we're working with Kennecott Land to lace the trail up along U-111 to bridge the rail line. We're talking to them about continuing the trail and connecting it along the rail line. And then every, even less than a quarter of a mile, we're thinking of a trail interval. Trails are significant to what we do. We hear that it's one of the most favored amenities that we do in our current work. And so we're looking at a fine-grained trail system. And then again, this is just to indicate that we'd like that asphalt trail system to continue into the Kennecott properties, and we're beginning that conversation. They agreed to let us take a first stab at what those connections might be. So that's what we've done here. But again, that trail network is really geared around this type of rider. We need to provide amenities for the entire range of age and fitness. So this is meant to be, again, a green lacy ribbon that lines not only some of the major roads, but also all the hills. And so it's meant for fitness and running. And I don't know what the snowpack is like in the winter up there, but you know, it could be fun if whether snowshoeing or skiing or something could happen there. And these are the types of things we generally consider in our work. Then we have a secondary trail system that's really geared around getting the neighborhoods onto that primary trail system. We found that building on greenways, and actually having the units face the greens is well accepted in the market. So when we look at our housing approach, we won't have any backs of homes and fences on major streets. The intent is to have a front door and a porch or a stoop on every street. So you can park, get out, walk right up, and you're never lost within a subdivision. It's all an interconnected street system. For those of you that were on the Daybreak tour, this is really what we do. It's connected neighborhood tissue, recognizing that there are hierarchy of access types. Examples of these types of secondary trail systems are, essentially trails that go between homes and between, neighborhood parks. So this would be the internal system that isn't on the hillside. It's embedded in the neighborhood. And here's a quick sketch of how that sort of reaches into the hills. So it becomes important that essentially we're living to the hills. We're trying to bring meaning and identity and the community into the hills. And then lastly is really the hiking, biking network. We imagine this is a mix of hiking trails, single track mountain biking trails, flow trails, some uphill routes and some downhill routes, and really looking at trying to appeal to a fitness recreation-minded individual. And then our goal is to figure out how we get the Bonneville Shoreline Trail begun on this part of the valley. We want to be the anchor for that. So we're thinking about how we create trailheads that serve the community as well as everyone in West Jordan or even in the west side of the valley. So again, the types of places that this will create are walking trails. We're thinking about putting some little green patches up on top so you can go and hang out on top of the hills and look back across the valley. But again, it's mountain biking, some cross-country riding, as well as some real serious flow trails and heavy-duty recreation, which we think would be a blast. We're starting to work on this type of thing at Daybreak too. So we're getting pretty good feedback on that approach. And then thinking about how that infrastructure might be used in 4 seasons. Again, that's totally weather related, but we like to look at these investments as multi-season investments, trying to find ways to get people engaged in the outdoors all year round. And then this plan starts to identify our points of view about the neighborhood parks. The neighborhood parks in the zone, I think they require 2 acres of space, but we found that a broad range of scales is really important for community. Smaller intimate parks are more valued, embedded into a community. And these red dots represent activity centers. So for example, the little red dots in the green space at the mouth of each of those canyons essentially becomes a community park. It becomes a trailhead or mountain access. So that would happen both embedded into the community. The idea being is you can get from your home into this trail system, by crossing, maybe one, connector road. So it's really an extension of the parkway system deep into the neighborhood. Here's a cross section through this area where we think we will, for some reason that's blurry, where we anticipate starting with a model home village around this rectangular park in the middle. And we've cut a section through this hillside to show you, what our plans are for starting. We're planning on doing some sort of clubhouse or community amenity. It might have a bit of a market in it for the near term, but it will help pick up the grade as it steps up the hillside. We're looking at a swimming pool, at a community amphitheater, as well as trails lacing the site, and then with some native hillside with homes set back from the ridge line. So it's really knitting together the community, and that's what it looks like in plan. I've got a few other sections here. Oh, and that's our sort of initial concept rendering, what we're currently calling base camp. So this might be the place where you rent your e-bike or your mountain bike, or this is the near-term hangout zone for the community, not unlike the hub that we recently developed at Daybreak. The next section over is an example of what that character might look like along one of these secondary alignments up to that green space. If I pan up there, you can see that on some of the lower slope topo, where it's more 15% slope, we can use 2 building modules to get up to that green ribbon. Let's see if this will load. That kind of shows that we anticipate that we'll pick up runoff from the hills at the toe of the slope and we'll flow it along the green channel into our storm basins. We're retaining 100-year storm on site. And then you get a sense of what that slope looks like past trails all the way up to the top of the site. So again, we won't have homes backing on open space with big fences. We actually will have homes fronting on it. So at Daybreak, we front homes onto the lake with trails. Here, the hills become the lake. So we anticipate that experience could be, pretty remarkable. So the trail doesn't become a part of a backwater. It becomes a primary feature in the plan. And then I have one last one to show you. This is a green space that's a little lower slope and a little bigger. And as we coordinate with Rio Tinto, it could probably become even bigger still. But if I show you, the type of community, and then we can set whether it's small rec fields or this might be a trailhead for the mountain bike, a blend of playgrounds, and maybe even small BMX type features as a part of a pump track system in the trail. That's what we anticipate doing in that site. So here are some photos that indicate what that park at the end of these canyons might look like. So this is our intention, and I think we're pretty good at translating intention into reality. This is what we really plan to do. Now, the nature of the actual playground we'll have to solve and figure out, but these are the images, the precedents that we're using as inspiration, recognizing that there are no trees there now. All those trees will be something we'll have to plant, and over the course of 15, 20 years, it will start to take on a character like that. We're really interested in child's play that's creative, where you're not sort of forcing a single function, but where you're creating opportunities for creative. Well, what does that mean in terms of the neighborhood? We're really into contrast. We're contrasting these very native hillsides that are open with the trail system against community development. And so we're clustering uses. We don't subdivide land and say this is going to be 3 per acre and that's going to be 13 per acre and aggregate it. We're about blending so that there's sort of a shift and change in intensity all through the plan. So just to give you a sense of, this is what we anticipate. Of course, this is 2 years ahead of potential launch, but we're trying to understand what does the market actually need and how would we blend that into a site plan that would live well. And so these are really a blend of product types that range from, well, on the townhome side, 20 feet wide, to the single family side, 90 feet wide. And you might look at these and say, well, these are narrower than what you normally do. And the reason for that is because we're not trying to fit a 3-car garage out front too. All the garages will be placed on lanes. And the reason for this is that if you pull the front doors a little closer together, there's a different attitude about house design, which creates private outdoor rooms between houses. It doesn't rely on distance for privacy. We have a completely different way of doing it. We're investing a bit of the private yard into the open space realm. So we tend to attract buyers that are interested in more than just a home. It's more a home and a place. And the reason we've been successful is because that's an unmet need generally in the valley. There is a lot of product out there which is really a house on a big lot. And our experience shows that that's a bit oversaturated. And so what we've tried to do is lead out with what the unmet need is. This is reflective of our work in Daybreak as well. So if you can see, this little diagram here, that would be a looping road, and then the distance between the road and the open space would essentially be 2 lots deep with, you know, parking courts inside, and that's how we get that type of frontage. As we look at the neighborhoods, we're essentially stepping down in density into the hills and increasing in intensity toward the village center. So this map right here, what we haven't yet shown is what the commercial experience would be like. That's something we're still working on. We're trying to get this, these ideas on paper as fast as we can, so that you can see what it is that we would like to do. But we think of the arrangement of housing types through the lens of a transect. So a transect means that as you get toward a village center, things change. The hardscape changes, the pavement changes, the building proximity gets tighter, the buildings get taller. And then as you get out into the neighborhood, it all steps down in scale. It becomes looser. And so we use this sort of intensity, crescendo, decrescendo, as you move through the plan, because it's what helps make a place walkable. If you're having to walk along, 3 and 4 car driveways between doors, everything feels very far, and people are more inclined to drive. And so as we think about how we develop into the future, this is essentially the work that we've been studying, is how do you actually develop community in such a way that people have choice. They can drive, or they can walk, or they can ride a bike. And so we're very interested in bringing interest, recreation, and place closer to people. And that's what this plan is really trying to demonstrate. And these are some lower views. You're not really seeing the color very well. But essentially, what the figure ground is in context of the hills and the mountainside. Now I could go on and on and on about this, but I imagine you have some questions, and then I might have some additional slides that address a question specifically.
Let's turn that back on. Good thing. Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Green.
So when you started out, you said that you anticipate 45% to be multifamily units?
Yeah,
attached?
that's roughly exactly what we're doing now.
I'm gonna tell you, in my mind, that's crazy.
Why is
for
that?
West Jordan.
Could you help me understand? Because this is my first project in West
Well,
Jordan.
I'm gonna tell you, there's a lot of West Jordaners that are against high density. Now, I get that this project's only 5 units per acre, and 5 units per acre is a really good density. But there are a lot of people out there that when you start talking about multifamily, and let me put this into perspective, the next item on the agenda is an interchange overlay zone that we're talking about being proactive and designating some areas in the city as high density, or more appropriate for higher density. And when I get told that half the project is going to be apartments or townhomes, it concerns me. That just, the ultimate goal of the city, and I know that the PC zone is in it, and Laura, you can, but when we changed the PC zone, did we change the 8317 model there?
That's a separate ordinance, but that's a work in progress right now, so.
So,
I would just keep an open mind with their presentation, and then,
but just to provide some feedback, as you're looking at this presentation, 45% of a project doesn't seem to be in line with our general plan.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be in line with our general, what we've done in the past. And that's not to say, I mean, I like parts of Daybreak in South Jordan, but I still get concerned when we're talking about half the units are multifamily.
Can I ask a question? Do you think an image like this would be disagreeable to the citizens of West Jordan?
I don't know,
Okay.
because an image like that, in that image there, are you telling me there's 45% multifamily?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and the way we do multifamily is that we don't create multifamily projects. We create multifamily moments, and it's laced through the plan. So for example, These homes on the left, when we opened this part of Daybreak in '08, they were selling for about $700,000 or $800,000 on a 7,000 square foot lot. These homes at the end are mansion homes. They're 3-unit homes that are designed to look like mansions that sold for $180,000. And we integrated them all on the site because we overcame the design objection. The way we manage the architecture and the urbanism, we found, at least in the context of the work that we've done to date, overcomes the objection because it's carefully considered and it feels like it belongs. We have heard that that there's an objection to density here, and so I'm trying to develop a sensitivity to that objection and try to figure out, is it no density at all costs, or are there other characteristics that would make it more appealing? We've pretty much overcome the density objection at Daybreak, so that we don't even talk about density anymore. It's all about place. So when we talk about a village center or a neighborhood center, there's sort of a shared idea of what that looks and feels like. So, you know, we have found that people enjoy being in a place like this, and that would be a village center. And the residential complement to it is a scale of residential that actually dovetails nicely into it. And we use intensity of development as a transition from commercial uses to single-family uses. And we felt like if you put single-family right against commercial uses where there is a lot of traffic, then suddenly traffic becomes an issue. And so by carefully sort of metering and transitioning scale, we overcome those types of objections. And so what Rich had suggested is that we want to actually come to West Jordan with our A game. So we're asking that we get to use the same tools, you know, because we're right-handed batters, and if we come to West Jordan and are asked to bat left-handed, we're not sure we'll bring our A game. So we're hoping to not have another 10-year learning curve that we had at Daybreak. We would rather just bring what we know, bring what works, bring value, beauty, and an integration of in a true master plan condition and setting that really reflects the intents and purposes of the zone. And I know there are you know, details, you know, might differ as to, you know, how you pull off that, but I think we're in line with the intent. So I wanted to throw that out there just to have the conversation up front, because we recognize that that there are some concerns.
If this were 5 units per acre and there was no multifamily, would you have an issue with it?
So I'm gonna say I'm just concerned of the macro number, and maybe if we, because the other thing that concerns me is it doesn't look like there's a lot of you know, I saw that, you know, there's some 90 by 120 lots, which puts it at 10,000 square foot lots. But I haven't seen a ratio of those broken down. And I think that would be beneficial to say, you know, how, I mean, if we're putting in like on the north end, we're talking about 1,000 units and 108 acres. We're talking about 10 units per acre where other places were not. But I'm wondering what the breakdown, if we're only talking about, we're putting in 3,000 units and we're putting 10,000 square foot lots to say, I've got big homes, I don't buy that. I mean, there's gotta be an appropriate mix. And we've seen some proposals, and you know, I was against the one that it only had 12 large lots. We've gotta have a good mix. And from the proposal, I'm gonna be a little bit negative, or I haven't seen anything that shows a breakdown of mix and those kind of things, and I think that would be appropriate.
Can I share some context for why we've shown what we've shown?
Please.
We found that, well, one of the purposes of the zone is efficient use of land. And we found an efficient way to deliver a lot that allows the big home to show up. So, as we look at the open space condition, homes fronting a trail, fronting the hillside, these are the exact lot dimension that what we're proposing. What we know about those lot types is they absorb slowly, so they do become a smaller percentage. I can go back to the plan and show you, though, that it's more than 2 or 3. It's more like 20 or 30. But these are examples of homes that are 6,000 square feet selling for $2 million. So what will actually sell in West Jordan is a function of the market at that time. But our goal as a developer is to provide an entire cross-section of housing choice for people who value community as well as house. And so this segment of the market that we actually target, where there's really an unmet need, a gap, they want the big, nice house, but they don't need it on a huge lot. And so we have developed a pattern book, an architectural design strategy that actually delivers that desire in a more compact way. And so that's why we lead out with an approach. So we're not home builders. We actually curate community. We partner with home builders. And then we set up rigorous design standards, and we negotiate and curate as we get to a deal with them. And so part of our process really integrates, getting to this sort of outcome. We don't propose this idea and then just let it unfold. We actually manage to the outcome. So the way we work generally is we have kind of a backstop design standard that gets recorded on Mylar with the plat. And then we have our own higher level of design guidelines that our team of architects actually draws over the builder product. And we have a design review that cares about things that a lot of people don't care about. And the reason we care about it is if you're going to try to make a real walkable community where people can maintain their interest, there needs to be something to look at. When you drive by, you're driving at 30 miles an hour, and a lot of subpar development can kind of be okay because your eyes lift above it and you're looking at the beautiful mountains. But when you're walking, it's a completely different story. You need a different pattern. You need a narrower lot. You need higher architectural articulation. You need porches as transition from the horizontal to the vertical plane. You need detail. You need good proportions. There are people who can afford $2 million a year. And then the question is, well, how do you do that and not get objection? How do you get the appraisers to actually think that way? And, that's essentially what we do at Daybreak, and design becomes the common thread. If it couldn't be done, we wouldn't be doing it. But I think we can show that it can responsibly be done well, be done beautifully, and deliver a level of amenity that you haven't seen in West Jordan. It's just what we do. It's a part of our business. It's our ethic. All of this that you see, no one asked us to do this. This was really us searching the market and trying to understand what it is that people want, and then tailoring it to what people want. And we discovered that people settle. Not everyone settles. I would say probably 2/3 of the market don't settle. They get exactly what they want. There's 1/3 of the market that has to settle. And so rather than competing across the board with everyone else who's doing the same thing, we differentiate ourselves in the type of place and product we deliver.
Any other questions? This is a public hearing, so if there's anybody here that wants to speak about this, we'll go ahead and open up the public forum for you right now. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Any other conversation here, guys? I'm not taking any action on this, but we're gonna see you guys again in 3 weeks. For my part, just really quickly, I wanna say, I think this is great. I've sat on this dais for almost 5 years, and I've heard comments from up here talking about the fact that we're a starter community. People buy here, and then when they get bigger, they move on. Well, those people end up in Daybreak, right? We talked about not wanting 6,000 square foot lots, but we've got evidence of houses. I don't know who wouldn't want to buy and stay in this house, one of these houses in a 6,000 square foot lot. It's built differently, right? It's a walkable community. All these things are things that have been said to decry the projects that we get. I just think that every single one of these is addressed. We're hiding the multifamily. I mean, those $180,000 homes don't look like a $180,000 home. It looks like a mansion that's kind of hidden. I like that. For me, I think this works, and this is exactly what we need. Is it for everybody? No. My wife and I fight about this all the time. She thinks Daybreak is a mess. I think it's beautiful, right? So it's not for everybody, but it is for somebody, and this is gonna be a very well-received project, in my opinion. Commissioner Thomas.
Actually, I was gonna just kind of echo that. I know Commissioner Green's gonna be really shocked when I say this, but when I was going through the tour out at Daybreak and stuff, and some of the amenities and some of the stuff that I saw really kind of impressed me. And I'm one of those ones that was totally against that whole entire development right up to get-go, and people up here know my feelings about high-density housing, and so, I mean, I'm not saying I'm 100% sold on the whole idea, but you sure have definitely at least piqued my interest. And one of the things I thought was really interesting, and some of these neighborhoods and stuff that have come up, one builder builds them all, and they're like cookie-cutter houses. And I agree with Chairman Quinney. It's not a really good selling point. And I think if you involve a lot of different builders, a lot of different designs, and blend them so that they match, but not everything's the same, I think it does add to the community. So, thank you.
Anybody else?
I'll just add
Commissioner
my 5 cents to this. Thank you, Chair. I think it's fantastic as well. I was also surprised at the Daybreak. I have heard many comments, good and bad, but I was thoroughly impressed. I like how you design community for people to live in. So I think it's a great product. Thank you.
Commissioner England.
I'll just add my opinion here since it seems to be what we're doing. I love it. You got me on the mountain biking. I think that's something that's missing on this end of the valley. Everybody goes to Draper and bikes up Corner Canyon. So bringing that element in is great. You're increasing people's, quality of life, and I like that. I like the design aspect, the walkability. Like Commissioner Quinney said, we sit and bark at people and tell them we want this, that, and the other. You guys have kind of hit every single one of those bullet points that we're asking for. I think this will be a huge draw to the West Jordan city. I will admit that 45% multi-unit housing is on paper startling, but I think you guys have solved some of that. I think the issue people have is the density, obviously, the parking and the traffic around those, and I think you guys have solved that by blending it. I think blending is the perfect word. So as long as the traffic isn't an issue, I love it. That's all I got.
Commissioner Maluthi, anything you want to add? You're the only one left. All right, thank you guys. We'll see you in, I guess, 3 weeks is what we're told.
Can I make one parting statement?
Sure.
The intent isn't that there's a lot of rental apartments in the project. That's a very small amount of the mix. But townhomes are a critical piece to placemaking. I think currently in the plan, we're showing one apartment project at 150 units. It's not that you couldn't take more to make a good village center, but when we think of all those units, it's not large apartment projects in the plan.
Thank you. We'll see you guys in 3 weeks.
Right, thanks.
Anything else from staff on that? Sorry, I didn't even let you speak, Ray. You good? Okay. We'll move along here then. Next item up is text amendment regarding the cap and grade conversation that Commissioner Green mentioned, amending the 2009 city code for exemptions to include properties located in the IOZ This is has citywide applicability, and Mr. Gardner, you have the floor.
So, last meeting, the planning commission sent a favorable recommendation for the interchange overlay zone to the city council. And as the planning commission already knows, this was a result of a request from both the council and the planning commission at the last combined meeting in April to develop something to make the interchange areas more livable, attractive, make it something the city can really be proud of. And there's some areas of the interchange that are interchange overlay zone. And let me back up, it isn't an overlay, and so it will be up to the planning commission to recommend to the council if the overlay should be adopted in any of those areas that are on the map. But the reason that some of the interchanges around 90th South, 56th West, coming off Mountain View Corridor will be by and large 90% commercial, retail shops, offices, that type of thing that will serve the commercial and retail needs of the community. There might not be any takers out there right now for these areas, but that's not gonna last forever. I can tell you there'll be some coming down the road. And so I think establishing some very good design guidelines, how we want that area to look, rather than just a sprawl, normal blacktop, big box, mid box, small box, retail development. I think the city wants something different for those areas. And so with that said, there will be some multifamily in those zones, and that's where the planning commission and city council felt that some higher density housing can be appropriate. And so with that being said, the IOZ will be added as another exemption to the cap and grade ordinance. If the planning commission chooses to forward a positive or negative recommendation, it will ultimately be up to the city council to decide if the exemption's in place. So, do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? Okay, we will open this up to the public. Is there anybody here that would like to come talk to us a little bit about this? I think we've heard enough from you, sir.
Well, thanks, Commissioner. No, it's good to be back before you. I'm Ben Southworth, resident here in West Jordan, and I want to speak in favor of this text amendment. I brought my copy of the general plan, which was intimately involved with the latest and greatest last update that we had, and so I'm very familiar with it, and I can say that the findings of fact I find to be spot on. I could even go further with what's listed, but I think they're very sufficient. But beyond that, I think it aligns very well with the intent of cap and grade. You've heard from council members and others over the years that it's not the intention to a complete moratorium on high-density housing. But we have to be a lot smarter about where we place these things, high-density housing in particular, and where it's at, and where, that matters. And so that's what cap and grade is intended to do, and as such, there are exemptions. It does have its drawbacks, and we've seen some of the issues that have come up over the years. We got exactly what we wanted in some instances, and that hasn't been a good thing. But taking steps like you're considering now, and hopefully the city council will consider it as well, will help alleviate some of that. But this goes right in line with some of those exemptions with TOD, your master plan, PCs, PRDs, your R2 zones. And I just want to speak in favor of that and say thank you for your consideration, your wisdom, and how you're guiding the city and all you give to our community.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring this back to the planning commission for discussion, motion, et cetera, et cetera. Commissioner Hatch.
I will go ahead and make a motion.
Thank you.
Based on the information and findings set forth in the staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to the City Council for this application.
Second. Oh, sorry, Commissioner England.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hatch, seconded by Commissioner England. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are unanimous again, bringing us to our last item. Again, Mr. Gardner, let's talk about weed. Use the proper term, cannabis.
Okay, so a few months ago, following the statute that was in place, that the legislature passed in last spring after they chose to go a different direction than, what was that called, a resolution, or what was, what the,
Well, there was a special session that was,
no, what was the vote on the,
what, joint resolution?
no, with the voters?
Oh,
Proposition.
proposition, right,
And so the legislature chose to write a statute that they felt would be appropriate, which is their right. And of course, we followed the statute and we designated areas, conditional uses, one agricultural zone, a conditional use, and one industrial area, which was required by the statute, as a conditional use for a cannabis production facility, which that includes the processing of the marijuana or the cannabis, and also allowed for growth to take place either in a greenhouse or an outdoor area. However, there was some hiccups with the law. I think some of the county attorneys would not, because the original law had I think the state medical or the county health departments distributing the medical marijuana. The county attorneys advised no one in the county health departments to do that because they felt it was some violation, or it left the counties exposed to a lawsuit. So the legislature again went back and worked on a compromised bill, or a new bill. And what that did this time was it took the conditional use away from the city, the land use, and made it permitted use in one agricultural zone or one industrial zone. However, there are proximity requirements that are in it this time. It can't be located any closer than 1,000 feet to a community facility, church, school, library, park, that type of thing, or 600 feet from a primarily residential development or zone. And so that's what we're left with. So basically this ordinance will be to comply with a statute that was passed last summer, a couple of months ago, sometime in the summer.
Yeah, I think it became effective in May or June, the initial one.
And so, and the one thing, there is a timeout provision. If we don't change it, then we lose all control. And so, do you have any questions of me?
But yeah, this most recent law was passed in the special legislative session several weeks ago that we're responding to. So really what we're doing here is just required by this most recent state law. And the fortunate thing is we did have our existing ordinances in place, which were fully compliant with the previous law. So by adopting this, we'll be on track with the most recent version as well.
Any questions for staff? All right, our last public hearing of the night. Does anybody want to come talk about medical marijuana? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring this back to the commission for discussion or a motion. Commissioner England.
I'll make a motion unless anybody has any discussion, talking points. Based on the information and findings set forth in this staff report, upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for this application.
Commissioner Thomas.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner England, seconded by Commissioner Thomas. Any discussion to the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are unanimous.
Did we remind everybody the meetings are on Wednesday?
Yeah, so everybody knows next month, meetings are on the first and third Wednesdays. And we have our joint session, is that still on?
Yes,
Okay, in 2 weeks.
October 30th?
Yes, October
Tuesday.
30th.
And,
So no masks or weapons.
and you guys did get a raise. Didn't that go through, Julie? Yeah, so,
Yeah, they passed that.
so now you're making the big bucks. So.
That's all right. So is the joint meeting, is it on Tuesday, the 29th, or Wednesday, the 30th? I thought it was the 29th. Isn't it? Tuesday, the 29th.
Tuesday, the 29th.
So it's 2 weeks from today,
Yeah,
right?
it's usually on Tuesday.
You know, I'm generally in the right church, but I'm always in the wrong pew, so, and I'm glad Julie and Duncan are here to correct me, because, you know, I throw dates out willy-nilly, and so,
I thought it was the 30th as well, so
okay.
I'm sitting on the same pew. I move that we adjourn.